Sounds good.
And we're live in 3, 2, 1. And welcome, everybody. It's time for another Planetmullins Podcast. And today I have a fantastic steel guitar player, producer, composer, multi-platinum, Grammy-winning, studio producing gear head, fantastic guy in Denver, Colorado, coming to us live right now. This is Mr. John Macy. Hey, John.
Hey, Rob. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, it's good to see you, too. We got a lot to get into, and before we do, I want to just say that when I recorded at your studio in February, you guys had 2 grand pianos there, and my sponsor tonight is Pierre's Fine Pianos, which is a West LA piano store at 11039 West Pico. And we actually have Herbie Hancock's Fazioli on the stage there, which is kind of cool. I based my teaching program out of there. You can get a Yamaha, Bosendorfer, a Steinway, a Kawai, digital pianos, anything that you want. So if you just go to www.pierresfinepianos.com, you can send an email, you can call. It's appointment only because of the dang virus, which is weird. And we'll get into that too. But thank you, Pierre and Wynn, for your sponsorship. And now we go on with the show. So John Macy, how the heck did we meet in the first place? Do we even know? Because it was in the 18th century sometime.
Yeah, maybe 17th. I'm pretty sure, possibly. Right. But yeah, I was trying to think about that today. I've known you forever. It was probably in the I moved to Colorado in 1976. So, and you were already the mainstay in town, I think, when I moved there, in that thing. And we hooked up somewhere, but that's 4 decades ago. I can't remember my breakfast this morning,
Well, what I noticed was I was thinking the same thing today too, because I was thinking, well, I know we were connected through the Buddy Emmons thing because my band would play backup for him when he came to town, and he was a steel guitar player, and you're a steel guitar player, and maybe we should just start there as like, what is it that makes people want to play an instrument that's just so uniquely unusual? Because I think about that instrument and I go, the guy that invented that, let's go through his process the morning he made it.
Yeah, I know it's definitely a crazy piece of instrument, and I grew up in Lubbock, Texas, and in the 60s, and I hated country music. I thought it was terrible. I grew up.
Really?
Family, I listened to the Beatles and Dylan and Zeppelin,
Wow.
And then just before my senior year of high school, we moved to Boston. My family moved up there, and I did my senior year there. And I started hanging around a studio right out of high school. And then we went to somebody's house, and he played me a Linda Ronstadt record that had Buddy Emmons and Sneaky Pete and Michael Nesmith from the Monkees, who had playing steel. And I went, that does not sound like the country music I remember, from the 60s. And I went out and bought a steel the next week. I tracked one down. There was no teachers in Boston. There was one guy that got me going, and I joined a band right out. He said, you need to go join a band. I said, but I've only played 6 months. I suck. He goes, that's the whole point. Go get in a band. You'll either figure it out or you'll quit. You'll find out if you're made for it. And,
right.
And since there were no steel players up there, I answered an ad and I was the only guy that answered the ad, so I got the gig. They had to take me. And I stayed with that band till I moved to Colorado. I still played with them for like 4 years, and then Michael Murphey offered me to move to Colorado and tour with him and record with him, and hence we met. Somewhere in between. Probably late 70s, because I was on the road with him all of 76, 77.
Right. Well,
yeah, somewhere in there.
I was just kind of getting out of high school at that time, but I was a dedicated player and a composer, and I don't remember who it was that called me to be Buddy Emmons' backup band at that time for his tour through Colorado. I'm sorry?
I don't know if you can see this with the glare. There's the Buddy Emmons record that we made that you played on.
Oh wow! Hold that up in the center, John. Just move it to the side and hold it up, and then point it down just a little.
There you go. Now it doesn't.
Wow! Oh yeah, that's Marty Ruddy on bass in the red shirt, and then that's Buddy.
And Buddy was, the king, the most prolific just about all the changes on the guitar that, with the way the pedals and knee levers work, they pretty much all trace back to Buddy. He was not only a brilliant, just mind for figuring all that stuff out, but was, played immensely country and was one of the first jazz steel guitar players. He fell in love with jazz. He made a record in 1963 when he was 19 years old. They flew him to New York and put him up with some jazz guys, and they made a thing called Steel Guitar Jazz. And he was 19 and completely out of his depth, but held his own. And, he walked in and everybody was like, "Where's the charts?" And he said, I don't have any charts. It kind of went south for a couple of minutes until he started playing, and they kind of realized that. And so when he came out to do that show, we recorded Wayne Yakes, who had sort of brought him out for that, we pulled up in a Winnebago outside, put a mixer in it and recorded it to a cassette.
Wow.
Pressing the record. And I'll tell you a little funny story on the sideline. 40 years later, Wayne was at Buddy's house in Nashville, and they were just talking about stuff, and he said, "Yeah, like that record you played, you remember that you did with Rob Mullins?" And he goes, "I did a record with Rob Mullins?" And Wayne said, "Yeah." And Buddy goes over to his record collection, starts pulling out Rob Mullins records, going, "I love Rob Mullins. Are you sure I played with him?"
Wow.
He didn't remember it,
Well,
it was funny. He goes, "Yeah, I'm a huge Rob fan," and it was like, wow. And he couldn't even remember that. Times were pretty wild back then,
Well, it was a different era for sure, but both of us are members of the Recording Academy, and it's Grammy voting season and all that. And I just think it's amazing that there's all of this music online that goes to that Buddy record and further back into history. And people just take all of it for granted. Like if there was no gramophone and if there was no cassette player and if there was no Academy, nobody would have anything, man. They'd be listening to like Billy Graham crusades, and that would be kind of you'd have to go, like we used to go to those when I was a kid at Anaheim Stadium.
Sure.
And it's a funny thing because the recording thing that you and I just love so much is our gig. It's just this accepted standard thing that people just take it completely for granted. And that's one thing that I noticed about working with you is that you've always paid super special attention in this kind of country kind of way. So, and that's a different vibe than the whole LA thing. Because when I got big in Denver and I got nationally famous, I went to LA and there wasn't anybody chill like a John Macy. It was this whole fakery thing.
Yeah, in that world, yeah, for sure.
What do you call it? In that world. So people would ask me, they'd say, "What's it like out there?" And I'd say, "The weather's warm, but it sure is cold." Because what's cold about it is that it doesn't have the John Macy kind of spirit and the vibe and the excitement. It's just
we stay pretty low key, and that's just been my whole life. Just I don't get stressed out about anything. I have a cat trying to come in my office right now.
Well,
I just like to live that way and record that way and keep it simple. And I don't try to overthink things. It's like the young cats that are coming up, especially in the recording world, they just overthink everything and want to fix everything and make everything perfect. And
oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know if you find that, but it's like it's kind of like, really, you want to fix that? Why do you want to fix that? It sounds so great just the way it is. It's kind of like the whole grid thing, and you got to lock up. That drives me completely insane. One of my heroes is Cowboy Jack Clement. He was like one of the great country producers. And
oh, really?
Produced Johnny Cash and everybody. He produced that U2 Rattle and Hum record from Memphis. He was all over the map, and he was a philosopher. And he started talking about Pro Tools when fixing things one time. He said, "Yeah, we tried that once, and that's when I learned perfect equates to shit." I kind of live by those words, It's like, just I'd rather have a bunch of great players in the room playing, and if you need to fix something, play it again. It's like
right. Well, yeah, I think so. And then for me, with a jazz background, the jazz guys never have a budget, so we had to get good at live recording.
Yeah,
because you think about how easy, I'm sounding like Grandpa Mullins here, but thankfully I'm not. But
Right.
but when you have the computer that can enhance and make perfect all of these little things we've gotten used to the sound of perfectly metronomical, soulless, stupid music. And I'm not going to diss somebody like Billie Eilish, who won Artist of the Year for the Grammys last
Oh,
year.
no, I appreciate all that stuff.
I mean, I love all that stuff, but what I don't love, John, is there's the death of melody is included in your idea.
Yeah, exactly. And just soulful playing and whatnot. It's so hard to teach, especially young guys. Especially in my world, which is, country's a little more simplistic. I mean, it's you're supporting a lyric and you're supporting a singer. So
Right.
you got a guitar player coming in that worked all week on this one really cool thing to play, and he, it just doesn't fit. It's hard to find those guys that can play three notes, in the right place with the right makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up because it's so cool. But it's hard to teach guys that. You have to kind of immerse yourself in that. And we're always saying, yeah, that part you just played sounds really, really great. It sounds really great, on your record, not this.
Right. Yeah, I love that comment
Don't
too,
play
like
that.
the put it on your album,
Yeah.
because the difference, John, is that what we came up with was a human idea of community and a loving, challenging situation where I got thrown into situations sometimes where I was just going, holy smokes, that's Ronnie Laws, or holy smokes, it's frickin' Wilton Felder. And I'm sitting there going, or Hubert Laws, oh my God, I've been like worshiping this guy since I was 10. And now here I am in the studio shaking like a leaf. But you step up and you have the human experience. And the human experience of music is what I really think is missing. And I told somebody in an interview like a week or so ago that was a grid-oriented person, and they were saying, well, get used to the grid, man, because that's how all the music is, and it's true. And I said, but if you take Led Zeppelin Black Flag and you try and pull that up on a Pro Tools grid, good luck.
Good luck, man. You're going to be tempo mapping for a week,
Yeah, you're going to be, because it just comes down to humans have these imperfections, and we push ahead during the chorus and we slow down a little on the verse, and sometimes we get a little quiet. But that's where, how did you develop your concept as a producer to where you could kind of see all these things happening? Because the producer is the one, not only are you responsible for the final result, good or bad, but you've got to take all these humans' tendencies and shape it into something that gets you a platinum album. I mean, do you have a strategy for how you do that?
I come from, there's lots of producers, there's lots of guys in my book, there's guys like David Foster that probably hears every note that's going to be on the record when he walks in the door. Mm-hmm. And then there's guys that show up and they just hang out in the control room and they're the producer, but they just know how to order the coolest food and create the coolest vibe and let the players alone, and I sort of lean way more that direction. I always like, here, what do you hear, and let players do where they go first before I ever tell them my lame idea, because 9 out of 10 times they're going to play something way cooler than I was fixing to tell them. But you got to have the right kind of players for that too, guys, and the guys I work with, around, they're all seasoned like that. I grew up in the studio playing, and so I heard producers yelling at players from day one about playing too much, so it was kind of ingrained into my brain, so
is that really the thing that players are most guilty of, is just like overplaying in a session?
Outside of the true session guys know exactly what to do. It's when you work in a market like Colorado, there's some just amazing players here, some really great players, and I don't call them because it's just hard to corral them in to play the right thing.
So this is why I'm not getting any calls. Okay, I get
it. No, I mean, there's those guys that that know how to come in, and I like players that that ask for lyric sheets and stuff. They're walking in playing. It's like, hey, can you give me a lyric sheet? I want to hear what they're doing. And there's one of my steel guitar heroes, Sonny Garish, was one of the king studio players in the '70s in Nashville, and still playing to this day. He's in his 80s. And
wow.
but I've used him on sessions over the years, and I would pick up the charts. This is when we were cutting Nashville. I go pick up the charts at the end of the day, and I would kind of reorganize them. I kept coming across these charts in this one handwriting that had key vocal lyrics written on top of his number chart, and
Oh, wow.
and that was Sonny listening in the control room and notating places to support that lyric.
Wow.
You know, and that's what's hard to find guys like that. You know, it's like, hey, check this out. It's like, well, you know, Roy Nichols that played for Merle Haggard, he's one of my favorite guitar players anyway. And somebody asked him about what he did, you know, when he goes into a recording session, he goes, man, I'm always just looking for places not to play, you know?
Wow.
And it's like, how do you teach that mentality, you know?
I don't really know, John, because
it's tough, you know?
there's a strange kind of narcissistic. Okay.
Just gonna let my cat out the door.
Oh, sure, no problem. There's a strange sort of narcissistic thing that I noticed in about the last 10 years or so with players. And I run a kind of a mentoring program, you know, in LA, where somebody will say, hey, well, Rob Mullins has this program. It's called Student to Artist. And if you can sign up and get in, then you learn how to make your album, and you know, get the Grammy experience, hopefully one day. And you have the whole experience of working with players and, you know, getting evaluated. Because I think peer evaluation is a really good thing. It used to scare a lot of people who, you take a Michael Jackson and you go, nobody's going to tell Michael, hey, you know, don't buy the elephant, all right? Like, nobody's going to say that. But in the Grammys, you're getting peer evaluated. And in my program, it's peer evaluation. So sometimes these kids will come in, and I remember this one girl came in and I said, okay, what song are we doing? She handed me the chart. It's in C, and she sings an E, and there's no key signature. And I play the C chord, and I said, what key is the song in? She goes, it's in E. And I said, why is it in E? And she says, well, because that's my first note, and that's all that matters.
Okay.
So, you know, there's a certain kind of, because what I think has made you, I mean, you're one of the most successful people in this area as well as in Texas, because, you know, you've got these problems like, well, we're remodeling the house for the grandchildren. Well, what's happening? Well, our Texas property has suffered slight damage, so we're with the insurance people. And, you know, you've done really well, but wouldn't a lot of that success have to do with the way that you're envisioning a whole song? You're like thinking about the entire production. You're thinking about the support of the vocal and the vocalist, and it's not about the ego of the individual person, right?
Yeah, I try to stay way away from that. And my thing as a producer is digging into the song and figuring out the song and casting the right people on it. That's the biggest thing for me. And when you cast the right people, when you go like, oh, wow, I just got this sort of R&B-ish tune for this girl I'm producing right now. And it was like, I know the perfect guitar player for this. We need Chris Lusinger in Nashville to play on this, you know? And it's so spot on perfect. Email it to him, get it back the next day. I wouldn't touch a thing in it. And it makes me look like a genius because I know the right guys to call it. Now he might not be the right call for the next song, you know? So
right.
For me, it makes my life easy by casting the right people and kind of getting out of the way and being there to go, if they start veering off the road we're trying to go down a little bit, it's easy to correct that. Although 99% of the time they never do if you have the right guys for the right song.
Right.
I see a lot of guys that come through our studios, they bring players in and you can tell right off they're not the right guys for that song, and it's never going to be great because they're trying to force them into something that they want to hear. I just hire the right guys, and it makes life super easy. You
know what I call I have a name for the problematic session people. It's called nephews.
Yeah.
I get so much of that. It's like, well, we got Mike Finnegan from Bonnie Raitt and Jimi Hendrix that can play organ on this. No, that's okay. I'm bringing my nephew in.
Yeah.
So you end up at that point of, all right, are we going to let the nephew screw around for 2 full days to do what Finnegan would do in 4 minutes?
Right, I know.
Right. So but that's a really hard part about managing the studio production process. And
that's why I really don't like to work with bands for the most part.
Uh-huh.
most of my clientele are artists that we put the band together for the project, and of course, especially in a regional market like this, guys have their, you get into an intense little political hotbed. It's like, well, I'm good enough to play in your band, but not on your record. Well, you just said it. That's kind of exactly what here. Go learn these parts, and guys, and guys get really upset when if they get replaced, and I was never that way. It's like, well, if you're going to replace, the only thing that would ever bother me, it's like, oh, you're going to replace my part? Well, it better be a better player, just don't replace me with somebody lesser, You want to get Paul Franklin to replay my part? I love Paul Franklin. That's that guy just, can I come hang out,
Right, sure.
But yeah, I get into that political hot nest a lot. So a lot of times it's like, if you want me to do the record with you, you got to kind of do it my way, or I'm not really interested, unless it's a really great band. I mean, sometimes the bands are really great, but I'd say 75% of what I do, I get to cast the players for the project. And
well, that
them so smoothly, budgets are always right, because you know exactly what you're going to get. It's like, you're not, I'll get this great guitar player and he just spent 4 hours on a part that's going to get erased the next day. It's like, why don't you just we'll have it in 20 minutes and it'll be 10 times better,
Yeah, that's called the nephew.
Yeah.
I just call it the nephew thing. Like, there's a weird term out there about called the Karens, and these are apparently like the new complaining people and stuff. And I just want to apologize to anyone named Karen, because I've never known a person that was a pain in the ass named Karen. All my Karens are good. But there's Karen is Sharon. And Sharon's a good too. Sharon's a good too.
I had last year called, and we didn't use him on this artist record. It was her guitar player, and he read me a riot act over the phone. It was just like, it was just not pretty, and I just basically had to hang up at some point. And about 6 months later, he called up with this gigantic apology and said,
wow,
I started studying the parts on this record and it changed my whole way of playing.
Wow.
Didn't see it at the time, I thought I was just getting kicked off the record, but he said, wow, my life changed because I had to go learn all these parts, and it said it changed the way I played, it changed the way my touch, it was actually, so sometimes it goes in their favor, sometimes they just hold a grudge forever and you don't want to because they're going to yell at you, but.
Right. Well, here's a silly little story that happened to me in August. So I have, I'm commuting between LA and Denver, right? I'm kind of in both places right now. And I had a cool call from a guy, Preston Glass, an R&B producer, and he said, George Benson has just signed the sax player to this thing, and we want to recut Roll With It by Steve Winwood. And I want you to be the rhythm section. And I was like, cool, man, I'm going to hang out by the beach and make good money and like play all this stuff, and it's going to be great. But I also got a call from this girl. And this was a girl I had worked with before, hesitantly. But what she said is, she said, I have a children's song. I want you to play piano on it. I'm not in town, but I want you to do it, and let me send it to you. So she sends me this not completely done lyric sheet and a not complete recording of her singing. And I happen to be friends with her best friend. And I asked the best friend, I said, this isn't complete, right? And she goes, no, I'm sure there's more to it. And I'm thinking, okay, so she's going to hire me to do this. She's not going to be in town. I better make sure that I get the complete thing before I go into the studio. I'll get Carmen Grillo to be the intermediary, because I was busy on the big project, which was the Steve Winwood remake. So Carmen calls me up and he says, yeah, man, I've got this whole thing already. I finally got the deal all set up and everything is groovy. Come over to Big Surprise Music and cut the piano. So I go over there and I cut the piano and I do a melodic reference for her, because she's going to listen and, say, oh, is that my lyric line, this and that. This girl was so crazy about the fact that she had these feelings, she's being left out, and this is the, and I'm saying, look, I'm only in town a couple of days. I didn't charge her a bunch of money. So what she did is he sent her my piano. She said, this is the worst piano stuff I've ever heard anyone do. And I've worked with Rob, and he's at his lowest point in his career. I can't believe how bad he's become. Find me another piano player to do my vision correctly. So he says, okay. So, and I'm back on the road. I get in the truck and drive away. So 5 weeks go by and Carmen calls me and he says, well, I had to get another piano player to replace you on that song for the girl. And I said, thank God, because I hated that song and I didn't want my name on there ever. And he says, well, you want to know what happened? I said, yeah. I said, what happened? And he goes, we got this other piano player in. She did a Zoom conference. She made him play 12 versions of the song. And then she sat on him for 4 days. And then she called up and she said, well, I hate all 12 versions, but I love the Rob Mullins one.
Yeah. It's a funny world out there. The other thing I run into a lot of times is we call it demo love. Guys that get so married to a little guitar part or something.
Oh, right.
You hear past it, and you get this really great player, and you come up with the coolest hook that just makes the song work so good. And they're going, but that's not like what I wrote it like. Well, it's just a 1-bar guitar line, and this
right.
is sometimes cooler, and it will stick in your head for the next 3 years, And it's that I run into that a lot too. Yeah, it's like certain little things in there, you don't want to, get out of their head.
You have those little blips. Well, John, I want to change the topic a little bit, and I want to go to what I think is just something that I'm, really impressed by with you. I mean, there's a lot of things, including the fact that both of us still have hair at our age. Mine's in here. But in the history of Denver music, you've had studios, you've always started one, and then when things got weird or funky or whatever, you would just pick up and just move somewhere else and keep on rolling. And you've done it 4 or 5 times, and now you're in the Mighty Fine studio complex out on 38th.
Yeah, which is my favorite. I think this is my 8th studio in Denver, and when I moved in, it was like, this is my last stop, man, because everybody there is so awesome. And and it's like, unlike a lot of the studios in town, it's a real earthy oriented studio. I mean, Colin is great. He's the go-to jazz guy in town. He put a thing on his Facebook today. There's a long list of jazz records that are in the Grammy first round that all came out of the room there, But we do lots of the infamous String Dusters are in there this week recording bluegrass. We do lots of, we just don't see metal and hip hop and stuff like that come through the room, which is really cool because that's not who any of us are there. So it makes it really cool. So it's great being in a room with 2 studios, just because of the synergy between you run into in the lounge, and
you've got Macy Sound Studios in one area. Then there's a hallway and a kind of like a common area, and then there's Mighty Fine, right?
Yeah, we're independent but cooperative. I mean, it's a team, even though my company's mine and Colin's is his. You would never know it being there. It's like a big family. And I've known Colin, the owner there, since I think he mixed his first record when he was 19 in my studio in 1992.
Oh, wow.
We go way back, and it's just a quality music place, which is what I love,
Yeah.
Just like everything that comes through there is good, and it's, I've had rooms that, it's like, we're doing it because we got to pay the rent,
Right.
It's like, no, but we're kind of the go-to place for that kind of music, which is a blast.
Well, when I first started coming back to Denver about a year ago, after hearing that there was this great scene going on in Denver, that was the one studio. I said, what's happening with the studios? Is Colorado Sound still there? And they said, yeah.
They're still doing really well, man. And Kevin's one of my oldest friends. We've been friends since '78, I think.
I love Kevin. I made a couple records with him, and he was and always is just still amazing at how he just comes up with these little ideas to throw in here and there, and the way he's
real laid back too. He's got that chill vibe too.
You can't rattle Kevin, man.
Nah, can't be in this business and get rattled.
No, I mean, me and Joel Taylor and Dave Carpenter in the early 90s would roll up in a giant snowstorm after driving from LA 20 hours. And we could have set Carpenter's Cadillac on fire in the parking lot, and Kevin would have been fine.
Yeah, he'd be, they set the car on fire again, I guess.
Set it on fire again.
And Colin and I, we're kind of that same way, I've got tons of respect for those guys. They're you know, if I wasn't working in my own rooms there, I'd probably go cut up there, you know, just because it's a great family up there too. You know, they're
Yeah, well, you guys managed to keep a sense of community, and I met one of his interns. I think her name was Lauren, and she was just amazing, and she had
oh
all.
yeah, I hired her out of when she first moved out here. She's so great, man. We love working with her.
I mean, I couldn't believe how talented and how nice she was.
Yeah,
Because usually in LA, those things don't go together. You know, you get a person that's not talented at all, and they really love themselves, and then they're on top of that, they're not nice.
right.
You know, but I was.
No, you don't need to go there.
Well, I want to just talk a little bit about the project of mine. It's called This Way Up, and when I was setting my feelers out, going down to Dazzle and looking around, I remember calling you last January, and you said, "Man, I have this great room, and I'm working with these great people, and we'd love to have you come down." So I came down, and you were so generous and gracious with your time, because I know it's a big time room, and I walked down the Hall of Fear. You know, the Hall of Fear is where you just go, "Oh, I'm Grammy nominated, but Platinum 1, Platinum 2, Platinum 3, gold, 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 gold," and you're just going, "Oh shit."
That's just, you know, it's funny. Some of the most impressive looking stuff is some of the not necessarily even your favorite stuff, you know. So I was so glad you called me, because we hadn't seen each other in like 30 years, I bet, you know.
It was
You know?
it was a really long time, but the things that stick with you over the decades, and I went through my Denver Rolodex, and I'm like, man, and I looked on the internet too, and then I was at Dazzle, and everybody said, "You got to go to Mighty Fine, and you got to see John, and you got to see Colin." And I went down there, and we hung out, and you gave me the grand tour, and then, you know, bumped into Jeff Jarvis, and there was
there. That's right. Yeah.
yeah, and then we shot some pictures, and then I called Kirk Hutchinson, and the next thing I knew, we were cutting, man. We were making this thing. We did it. We recorded it in February, and it's a 12-song album that we did in one session. And I think that for
the
me,
old days, man, that's the way they would always do it.
I know, and that was so fun for me, because I had these amazing young guys. You know, I had Liam Zom and Andrew Rose in there, and you know, I remember being at, you know, in my 20s and stuff, and going, "Oh, yeah, I have a session tomorrow. I'll just stay up all night and get high. I'll be fine." And by 2 in the afternoon, the rhythm section parts are done, and Andrew is like passed out on one couch, Liam is passed out on the other couch, and I'm just going, "John, we have stuff to do." And you go, "I know, let's get the percussion done." And I went out live with a shaker and a banana and like an orange and a cowbell, and we did the entire percussion on all 12 tunes in an hour with no playbacks.
Yeah, just okay. Next. I love confidence. You know, it's such a great.
Well, I mean, you know, and then I had to go over and go, "Knock, knock, knock, Liam. Oh, poor baby. Would you like some coffee or a decaf tea, because it's time to sing lead vocals?" And he was like, "What? Huh? What happened? What day is it? What time is it?" And we did one of the most fun days ever. I had so much fun working with you, man. And because, you know, there's a thing about the country people, and it just kind of goes with a high quality people, is that you never feel the stress of the situation, even though you're up against the clock and you've got people passed out.
Go in and do it, man, you know. And those young dogs can't run with the old dogs, man. We run them into the ground.
You know, it was funny too, because and then I went, you know, out in front to where that liquor store is, and I bought like the worst possible celebration scotch for you or whatever. And you took like one sip of it, and you're like, "Well, this could go right to the sink." So I gotta apologize about that.
You know, but I love it when you at the end of the day, it's like, it's done. We just did a whole record in one day, you know. And in country music, that's the way it used to be done always back then. I mean, you got,
really?
It was in 3-hour sessions, and most people expected to get at least 4 songs with a full band going down in 4 hours. You know, you do 4 sessions and you have a record, you know, or 3 sessions, you have a record, and you mixed it the next day or the day after, you know, and it was like out on the charts, you know, a couple weeks later, man. You know, I look at some of the projects they end up working on, and it's like you look at the date and go, that was 6 months ago, that we last did a session on this. It's like we should have done 5 other records with you by then. It's like I
Yeah,
love people who just jump in like that, and then we mixed the whole thing in one day. So it was just like,
yeah, because the jazz guys and the country guys, we both have that same idea. Now, some of the TV show guys are that way too. I mean, I worked in television.
yeah,
In
they
LA.
get it, but it's all written out. They know exactly what they want.
Yeah, there isn't anything that creative because it's all passed through the producers and this and that. But when it comes to the rap and the hip hop and these other things, most of it is just not done the way you and I like to work. Because I like to sit down next to you and say, hey man, what do you think about this? And you say, well, you could try this, and maybe we'll mix it this way, or let's add this, or go on to the next tune. And it's just I can always trust your ears. And then it's just easy. Like, it's long. If you're going to do an album of 12 tunes, I got up that morning at 6:00 in the morning, and I went to bed at 2 the next morning. But then I came in a couple of days later and I listened to what we did, and you were just like, man, you guys were killing it. And I'll just put this lexicon on there. And you have the baddest lexicon ever in lexicons. You should just have your own lexicon, cheesesteak or something.
Yeah, no way. I love records that way, and I was reading a thing a while back about all those great ECM records out of Sweden back in the 70s, and those were 3-day records, 2 days of recording, 1 day of mix, and it was done, gone, out the door, and I love working that way, and that's why I love working with, and with a full band too, cutting live, because at the end of the day, you get especially like when I work in Nashville, you've got 6 guys on the date, and you get a take. It's usually the first or the second take, and everybody goes, so let's go back to the top, and the acoustic player doubles his acoustic part, and the piano player moves from Hammond to a B3, and the electric guitar player plays a harmony to his solo, and the drummer plays a tambourine part, and you make one more pass of that. All you got to do is put the vocals on. It's done.
Now, John, I'm not that familiar with Nashville because I haven't really worked there much. Do you have a scratch vocal to work from, or are you just doing it on the fly?
Oh, generally, I always have the singer there, and generally, most of the time, you're getting the vocal takes too. They're in a booth. And,
okay.
So when they're doing a little overdub or a double or something, the singer's taking another pass, at it, And in the old days, there, which I was not really as much part of, but they would have sessions where there would be, everything went down, 4 background singers. They would have a couple of studios had a second floor loft thing. They would call it a string porch. They have strings up there, lead vocal, background vocals, full band, double acoustic guitars, electric, steel, fiddle. And at the end of that 3 minutes, it was a done song. It was, and they would churn out records really fast,
Right. Well, yeah, time.
I've got to be on top of your game to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you totally do, man. I mean, Wilton Felder, who was a big mentor for me through the 90s and on until his death a few years ago, was the bass player on a lot of Barry White stuff.
Wow. Yeah.
And people don't ever know that. Like, in the old days when we were coming up, we get the album and you look at the art and you're looking at the players and you're thinking about, wow, this is great. And you would kind of keep track of who's playing with who and who's doing what sessions. But Wilton would say, I'm in there playing the bass, and then we got the drummer, and then there's 3 guitar players on a Barry White session. You got a guy that's playing the chicken scratch, and then you got a guy that's playing the chords, and then you got a guy that's going to take the solo if there is a solo. And it was all just boom, boom, boom. You're going right on down there. And I like the excitement of that pressure. I mean, I don't consider it pressure anymore because I've just, like you, I've just done so much of it. But that's what I love about it.
It's amazing, and the energy that when you're looking at the guitar player, and he plays something really cool, and it just makes you play something cool too.
So
it's hard to do when you come in. Although I have a little crew of guys that I work with right now that we're all on the internet right now because we can't work together.
Right.
And it's totally. I was just mixing a song this morning and for this girl, and all the guitar parts and all the keyboard parts and my parts were all done by ourselves. But it sounds like we're in the same room looking at each other playing. I mean, it's just a dance between all the parts that's so perfect because everybody knows how to leave space is the biggest thing.
Right.
Like,
So,
wow, that does not sound like three guys that did this on different days by themselves, you know. Because
well,
records do sound like that. You can tell it's like, that doesn't really mesh with that, you know. It's kind of like,
well, that brings me to another point too, because when the virus hit, there seemed to be in Denver a mass rush towards the giant Zoom educational 30 person at a time individual video production issue. And I remember being out here in Denver in March and just watching this stuff happen. Then in April, by the time I got back to Denver from LA in April, there were just plethoras of all of these Zoom and synchronized things of all these big bands that couldn't get together. And
right, they play
you know,
together.
and I watched some of those things educationally, and I just thought, you know, it just really didn't, you know, because a lot of it was kids playing, and it just did not sync. Like, you could put all of it on a SMPTE time code, but it didn't sound professional. It didn't sound right to me. And that's a gift, man, when you can go online. And like, I do that with Jimmy Roberts. He's the sax player for Rod Stewart. I can send him a track and I can say, hey, JR, I'm doing this song called Who's Got the Gumbo? And he says, well, I don't have the gumbo, but I got a berry.
Yeah, there you go, you know. Yeah, it is, you know, a lot of guys I work with, you know, we kind of embraced that earlier. I like I do tons of steel guitar overdubs for people around the country and the world.
Uh-huh.
Even track for a guy in Israel the other day.
Wow.
And because steel guitar players are a little harder to find sometimes. And so the guys that like me and Justin and some of these guys that got into this ahead of it, there's so many players right now jumping on trying to figure it out. They're trying to learn Pro Tools. They're trying to get a rig they can record at home. A little bit behind the curve, you know. It's kind of like, so a lot of the guys that have been doing it for a while, it makes it easier too, you know. But it's a whole different world, man. My daughter owns a successful dance studio here, and I spent April in there, you know, hanging drop-down projectors and screens, and also she can have her people that come out from LA and New York to teach classes, teach them remotely. So the whole, you know, I've gotten way deep into it, you know, and it's working too, you know. So she'll have a choreographer in New York teach a master class to her kids here in Denver on a 12-foot screen, you know, that we're projecting onto, and it's saving her ass too, you know, because a lot of people that weren't in the head of the curve of that, you know, it's like they're trying to figure it all out. Fortunately, I find, you know, Colin's been doing stuff like that with the live side of that for years, so I can always just say, hey, what do I need to do this? And he's like, go do this, you know. It's like,
right. Well,
he was ahead of that curve in here, you know, and it was able to keep classes going even though you know, he couldn't have people in, you know. So it's kind of a changed world, you know.
Right. Well, the whole thing of, you know, for me, it's always, I've always been in jazz, so I'm always on the edge of complete financial decimation. So, you know, that's what's made me kind of keep up with the curve and the technologies. Not that I'm that excited about new technology now, because I think it's being forced on us in very strange ways. And, you know, I was talking to my uncle today who lives out in Springfield, Missouri, and he's trying to find, and he's a disabled vet, and he's trying to find a place to move to, because not only has he got problems in Springfield with, you know, just all the crazy political stuff going on, but he's in a senior center where people are vaping, and he's got lung problems, so he can't ever breathe.
Wow.
And then, you know, when the virus came in, Springfield has not handled it correctly. They've made a lot of mistakes, and they've kind of let a lot of things get run down and this and that. And today I called him because I'm worried about him. I said, well, what's going on with like the, you know, apartment search and this and that? And, you know, he has to do everything through Siri because he's also blind, pretty much blind. And he goes, I don't know what all this stuff is, but I click on a thing that says, I want to find an apartment in Fresno. Here's an apartment in Fresno. Then the next thing that happens is this like deep search, you know, Soviet style interrogation where, okay, you are looking for an apartment in Fresno. Give me your social security number. Tell me your age. How much do you weigh? How long have you lived where you live? How much is in your bank account? Where did you live in the last 7 places that you lived? And he's like, I can't even manage this stuff on my phone because the technology has gone way over the top, you know.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
so invasive.
just like music, man. It's crazy, you know. And I some of it's so exciting and so cool. And like we were talking about Lauren, you know, she's one of the new, you know, she's 25 and a Berkeley grad, just uber talented. And watching her work is so different than the way I work, you know. But it's really cool because I learn stuff, and then, you know, she comes in and watches what I do, and it's kind of like, you know, I'm the antique guy, you know. It's like a virtual tape machine, basically, you know, that I can edit on a little bit, you know. But I don't let Pro Tools, you know, run me, you know. It's like so many do. They think they have to do everything that it can do. It's like, I don't need any of that stuff. I don't want to learn, you know. And she'll go, "Why are you doing it that way?" You know, it's like, well, it works. You know, there's a way faster way to do that. It's like, I don't want to know. You know, this works for me. You know, it's really great, you know. So yeah, I dig a lot of that stuff. But, you know, I did a session in Nashville a while back, and there was you know, we cut this really soulful, you know, sort of R&B country tune, you know. And we were at lunch, and I
love that combo.
Yeah, but the second engineer, you know, he was a Full Sail guy, and, you know, and trying to make his, you know, bones there at the studio. And we're going to lunch, and he grabs me and goes, "Hey, man, hey, do you want me to fix those drums while you're at lunch for you?" And I'm going, "What do you mean fix the drums? What are you talking about?" And he goes over to Pro Tools and points at the grid, because we were cutting to a click. But he goes, look, the drummer's hitting the snare behind the grid every single time. I said, "That's why he gets double scale." Don't you dare touch the drums, you know? But that's the mentality I see a lot with the younger guys. It's like, you know, when you get everybody lined up perfectly on that grid, the sound gets smaller because everybody hits so precisely together. It's like, it's all those guys hitting just a little either side of that grid that make the sound just gets big.
Yeah, you might.
It's that, you know, you don't want to.
You know, it's funny, John. That guy might have heard that story about when they pulled in Hal Blaine to replace Ringo's fill during lunch. I don't know if you know that story, but
I sort of vaguely remember hearing that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell it really quick because we got other stuff to do here. But, you know, Ringo could not play this fill on this one tune, and George Martin said, "Well, all you chaps go to lunch, and, you know, I'll listen to it and, you know, work a little bit and this and that." So he calls in Hal Blaine. "Hal, come over here and play this fill. Ringo can't frickin' play the fill at all." So Hal goes over and he goes, "Boom, boom, 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 boom. Psh. Okay, see you, Hal." And it's perfect. So 90 minutes later, the Beatles come back into the studio, and they've had a nice lunch. And they say, "Well, play back the song." And George goes, "Play." And then it comes to that fill, and Ringo goes, "Well, I played it perfectly. I don't know why anyone would ever think that I didn't do it perfect, because it's perfect."
Yeah, that's funny, man.
Well, you know, just to kind of wrap things up a little bit, what are some of the, because I know you're, I got to ask this question before wrap up, because I had a student a couple years ago ask me, you know, my teen, because it's nice when you get a young person who you're kind of mentoring and they have math skills. And this guy comes in and he says, "Okay, you started teaching music at age 15 at Logan Music Center in Bear Valley, and now you're 60. How many hours did you, you know?" And he's like calculating. So we figured it out. It was more than, last year I celebrated 40,000 hours of one-on-one individual piano lessons. And so I'm looking at you and I'm thinking, we're around in the same kind of thing. How many hours do you think of your life have you spent in the studio working?
I mean, most of it. I mean, you know, I was a road dog, you know, and, you know, my first band for the first 4 years, we were on the road all the time. When I moved out to Colorado, I toured with Michael Murphey for a while, and then Gary Morris.
Michael Murphey was a huge name in those days.
Yeah, it was a huge thing for me, because I was 23, and that was my second band, you know, that I'd been in, and I moved out here.
Wow.
We played Red Rocks that summer and made a record at Caribou Ranch. And I thought,
oh my God, doesn't get any better.
You know, but about 82, I went pretty exclusive. I mean, I still go out and play, and I would go out on short tours occasionally, but pretty much every day in the studio for 40 something years, you know. That's just my home, you know, and I love it the most. You know, I don't mix live gigs. You know, I love to go out and play live. I do love playing music with people live, but I get on the road for about 5 days, and it's like, when are we going back? When do we get home? you know, it takes,
Yeah.
like, I would do it for the right thing, but it better be, the coin should be tall and the bus should be luxurious, if I'm going to go out on the road,
Yeah, I hear you, man. Well, when we get a chance to hang out live together and tip a couple back, I'll tell you how I got fired by Michael Nesmith right before his tour last year.
Oh, you told me that one. Yeah. I'm a huge, Nesmith is one of the 2 artists that made me play steel guitar.
I know.
He played in Denver last year and I got to go tell him that. It was pretty cool. He loves steel guitar, man. That guy loves steel guitar.
Well, there's a thing about Marty Ruddy, my bass player back in the 80s, used to just say, certain things are fretless and they just kind of like fly. They just slide all the way up to heaven. It's this burn, So I'm gonna resend you that track that I sent 4 months ago when I said, "Do you want to jump in on this?" And you go, "Heck yeah!" And then I never heard anything more. So,
oh, busted! I forgot all about that.
I know, man. Well, that's what happens when you're.
You don't have to send it to me. It's in my computer, so I'll get on that. I'm headed down to Texas on Sunday and for about a month, and I'll do it as soon as I get down there because I have no distractions down there. I've got my little studio down there, and I'll.
Nice. Okay, John. Well, look, man. I can't thank you enough for your genius and your friendship and your expertise and your, calm country kind of vibe and professionalism all these years. It's fantastic to talk to you tonight on my show. And
it's so great to reconnect after all these years too. I mean, I'm ready to do another project too.
I am too.
So we do another one.
We'll figure something out to do, and I'm hoping that all of this weird stuff going on in the world will kind of get out of the way and let us make more and more music, because as I said in one of my earlier shows in the last week, music is a liquid, it's a solid, it's a gas, it's an earthquake, and it's a tornado, and it's the force.
It is,
because every time we put all those, and I see it too, you put some great musical thing out and it just has a way, it just like gets through all the politics and all the BS and stuff. And I can't wait to put out my album that
hopefully we'll get it out here. I can't wait to share it, man. I was so excited. I know when you came to the studio that first day, I came home and told my wife, it's like, you'll never guess who I was hanging out with today. And she remembered right off, she remembered the Buddy thing and all that stuff. So yeah, it's a cool reconnect. And I'm starting to see more in that as we get older. I think we start seeing more of that too. People, we kind of get reconnected with people we haven't seen in a long time,
Yeah, and it's a beautiful thing, and you're a beautiful cat, man. So thanks for joining me, John. I'll see you sometime soon, and have a safe trip down to Texas, bro.
I will.